Happy Friday evening, and it is the weekend, and this is Southern Law After Hours. I'm fond of the saying, any port in a storm, and it was raining here earlier. So we've got to make use of sayings literally and figuratively. Otherwise, what's the benefit of being a lawyer if you can't stretch things? So this is not about Manson. It's about something else. You will see this in my office all the time. It's been with me for about a quarter of a century. And this is called a short timer stick. And this is a combination of obviously a bullet, a casing, and an artillery primer rod. It was chromed, still got a rope on it. This belonged to a unit in Vietnam, and it was given to each soldier who became the short timer. So if you had the least amount of time left in country, you got this. And it was a good luck charm, and it was a signal to treat you right because it was bad juju for the person who was the short timer to get killed. So this would pass from one person to the next. As the short timer would leave, that person would give it to the next. When the whole unit came back, the person who held the short timer stick, in this case, brought it back to America. I didn't serve in Vietnam. My father did. So how did I get this? This was given to me by my client for the first jury trial that I ever had. He, of course, had it decades after returning from Vietnam, and I've had it decades since then. It was really meaningful to him in his life, and his giving it to me was really meaningful to me. And I've never been without it because it's always reminded me of something special about becoming a lawyer. It brings me back to the whole root of this thing. Why would you do it? What can be good in it? Lawyers charge too much. They're cynical. They cheat. They lie. They do all these bad things, right? Yeah, not always. And I want to tell you a little bit about that case if you're interested in hearing it and why I got this and why I still have it. So I was a young associate at a big firm, and I was assigned a commercial case. It wasn't that big, and the partner decided this would be a chance for me to kind of cut my teeth on a real trial. Something can be hard to do at a big firm. So I became essentially first chair of this case, and this involved just this one guy who had made a lot of decisions that had put him on a path in his life that had not worked out at all. He had lost basically everything, his family, business, all of that. And he engaged us to try and help him recover money that he felt he was due in his business deal. And that sounds pretty boring, and that's how it started out. And I saw it as just another case that I had on a list of cases that I had. And many of those were big and easy billing cases. They weren't high maintenance because they weren't an individual person. We were a big firm. We worked for big clients. But as this case rolled along, I got to know more about the guy that I was representing and what had happened, what had led him to a point of extreme despair to essentially attempt to take his life. He reached the very end. And the strength it took him to try to come back from that, to try and rebuild, to try and reclaim his life and reclaim the love of his family and rebuild that. And this case tied right into that. And I saw it increasingly as something far more important than the other cases I had, that this was not just about money. He was pursuing this case so hard, not just because of the case, the money involved in it, but more, I think, to bring himself back from the edge of the abyss and to get his life started again, regain everything that he lost. So this was more important than just the causes of action alleged in the complaint. It was much more than that. And as we approached time for trial, and it became clear what the focus of the case would be on both sides, I didn't hate the defendants in this case. They were always very kind to me, and vice versa. It wasn't a contentious case in that regard, but it was extremely meaningful. They did not, of course, feel like on their side that they had liability or in the wrong at all. And I don't know that they really understood the stakes of the case. But as I spent time with the client and his wife, I would tell them, listen, you are always testifying. You are always testifying. Whatever you're trying to rebuild in your lives, when you walk out the door in the morning, you have done that. You hold the car door open for her. She puts her hand on you. In the elevator, you're nice to each other. Every second, every moment you're out of your house during this trial, you are completely together because you are always testifying, not just when you're in the witness box. The jury is looking around the room trying to figure out, who do I trust here? What's really going on? What's the score? They may see you outside the courtroom. They may see you interacting with people. So you're always testifying. And I learned more about them in that process, and also about the other witnesses, some members of the family who would come and tell me, can they ask me anything? And there might be a dark secret they had and wanted to know if they could be questioned on. And I say, I can't promise you that won't happen. To hear somebody in the family say, well, I'm going to do it anyway. I owe it to my brother. You know, this thing started to pick up steam for me. This was no commercial case. This was no mere breach of contract. This was something much more than that. So it came time for the trial, and we're impaneling the jurors, seating them, and I'm watching them in the jury box, and this thing is really amping up to me. Like, this is becoming real. This is meaningful. And we chose the jurors, and it was time for the opening statement, and I had prepared an opening statement that was maybe too clever, too law schoolish, because as I gave it, it wasn't a mere forecast of the evidence. It was painting a picture. And the defense attorney did something that they don't normally do often, which is start to object. Objection, Your Honor. It's not forecasting the evidence. And technically he was right. And the judge sustained a couple of those objections. And I had printed out the material points I wanted to make in the opening. I had practiced it like crazy, the way I was going to say it. And I knew I couldn't afford to get flustered. I looked, because you're allowed to stand during this opening statement in North Carolina. I stood in front of our bench and I looked over at my clients, and his wife was holding him, and it wasn't fake. And they were both watching me, and I stood for them, right? I stood for them. They couldn't stand for themselves. They trusted me. They trusted me not only to pay me to do this, they trusted me for what it meant to them, that everything they had was in my hands. And I was being derailed because I'd tried to be too clever on this opening statement. And after the second or third objection, I threw down my notes on the table. In my own mind, I thought, you cannot fail here. You cannot fail. And I got angry, and I knew this case back and forth, and I started telling the jury, the evidence will show. And I pointed at them. I pointed at the defendant. I pointed at my clients, and I poured so much emotion into that opening statement that I wouldn't have, and if I had just simply performed the rehearsed one. So it became a blessing in disguise, and it really cracked it open for me. You know, there wasn't going to be a prepared presentation anymore. This was going to be raw. This was going to be the war that I thought maybe a trial could be. And it was. It was quite a war. We put it on. They put it on. Both sides battling it out for days. But eventually the judge prevailed on us and the other side to reach a settlement, which was great news. Great news, because the defense had insisted they would never pay anything. And we called the case done. The jury was called in, and the judge informed them the case had settled. The lawyers would like to talk to you if you're willing to hang around to see how you thought the case went. We did that. It was freaking fantastic. My respect for the jury system increased so much listening to these citizens pulled off the street, away from their jobs, their own families, to listen to this case, how they had tried to understand it, how they had tried to analyze it, how they were trying to do the right thing. I really appreciated it. I always take that as my base assumption that the jury will try to do the right thing. It's always been that way since then. But the settlement of the case was just a spectacular time of joy for my client. It really was, and it meant much more to them than the check they got. It was a signal that this phase, which involved a lot of things that I can't talk about, had disappeared behind them. Had the door had been closed, they had fought their way through it. And in having this fight that they could all fight together, this family, they came back together. And we went out, and we were a much age difference, obviously. We went out and just partied like crazy. We just had a blast. And I had put everything I could into it. Everything I could. I was young. I was full of energy. I had a plenty big ego. I was just out of Army Special Forces and law school, and I thought I could do anything. And I realized, what if you don't? What if you fail? And then I thought, you cannot fail. You have to make this work for these people. And we did. The other lawyers did a good job on the other side too, but this worked out really, for everyone. And my client said he wanted to give me this because he didn't want me to ever forget how much it meant to him, what I had done for him. And what do you think I cared about more over the years, the paycheck that I got for that one case or this? And, unless somebody steals it, I'm going to have it until I die, because I've done a lot of cases all over the country with a lot of people. And I always remember this one because it reminds me to not be cynical, to remember why you got into this. It's not to earn a living, okay? It's to do the right thing. And I know a lot of lawyers like that. I know a lot of judges like that. I've seen a lot of jurors like that. So if your tendency is to always be cynical, maybe you see me lose patience with people like that sometimes online, because I can't go there. I can be there sometimes, but I cannot stay there, because I know the purpose of the law is to allow people the opportunity to arrive at justice. And you can't always get there. But your job as a zealous advocate is to fight to get there for your client. You stand for them. You stand for them when they cannot stand for themselves. And when you are able to do that, and you're able to bring something meaningful to your client, yeah, this is how you are paid. Thanks. Have a good weekend.